In this video, the bane of blacksmiths. Use the union guidelines to outsmart an HR woman. And update, our entitled parents who disowned us for not giving them grandchildren struck again. The bane of blacksmiths. So a little bit of a background, when I was 14, I got into forging knives with the most basic equipment, literally just charcoal and fire bricks for the forge and a hammer and tongs for my actual equipment. And I've been doing this for roughly 6 years, once or twice a week. When COVID started, I had a whole lot more time on my hands, and as my work was closed for 4 months, but reopened with limited hours, so now I have more time but still have income, so I decided I'd put a little money into my forge equipment. This happened last week. Out of courtesy to my neighbors, I told all my neighbors that I'd be making more noise as I was picking up the frequency that I used my forge as I got new equipment. All of who were fine with it, one of them being excited as he wanted me to make him a knife, all except one. My next door neighbor, who I'll call K. Can you guess which name that stands for? Now, Kay used to be friendly towards my family until about 4 years ago due to her not respecting our political views, so we stopped inviting her over and tended to avoid her since she tried to make arguments at every turn. At most, I'll say good morning and ask how are you? Anyways, I'm kinda off track. The issue she had with this was I don't want you polluting my yard with the smoke it's gonna make. And despite me explaining it's a propane forge, it doesn't produce much of any smoke, she still demanded that I don't do it. I ignored that, of course, as she can't tell me what I can and can't do on my property, and it was really just a formality to let my neighbors know. So I set up my forge in my backyard, put down gravel so there wasn't any fire hazard, lined it with bricks, and was putting the forge together and fixing it to the large flat stone I decided to set it on. She comes over as I'm doing this and walks into my backyard without me noticing and opens with, "I said you can't do that." I jump as I had no clue she was there, and that's when the fun starts. She begins yelling about how I said I wouldn't put anything back there. I didn't. How she'd get the HOA involved, of which our neighborhood doesn't have one, and when I informed them of that, she threatened to call the police, which was ridiculous. I responded with, "Get off my land before I call the cops on you." And she left, and I kept setting up my forge. Past a week, I treat the forge with no issues, and as of 2 days ago, I was working on my first knife out of it. When a guy walks up to my fence and asks if I'm the homeowner, I respond yes, look up from my forge, and who's about 50 feet away on the sidewalk with her arms crossed and a smug look on her face? K. So I ask what I can do for him, and he says, "I'm with my county. I'm a building inspector, and I got a report from your neighbors you were building a permanent structure without a permit?" I say no, last thing I built was this, and gestured at my forge. He looks around and says, "Are you planning on building anything or expanding any existing structure?" I respond, "Nope," and he simply writes it down and he asks what it is, and me and him chat about the forge for about 15 minutes before Kay, irritated because I'm not getting in trouble, storms over and in her shrill, annoying voice demands, "What are you doing? He broke county ordinance, so make him get rid of it." And the following conversation was essentially just no, I didn't, yeah, nothing's wrong here, and ended with her walking off and then driving off in her SUV. The inspector was cool and we chatted for a bit longer. Cut to yesterday. I walk out to start the forge, and while I'm getting ready to start the propane, I notice something pretty important. The line feeding into the forge is cut, and the bracket and copper tube the tank is on is bent inwards, with one of the bricks from the border of the gravel laying about 6 feet away in the grass. I'm confused for a minute before realizing what happened here. I take out my phone to check my backyard motion camera to see if there's any movement. Sure enough, there was movement through the night. The normal wildlife, a fox, 2 raccoons running outside their fence, a house cat, and Kay, walking into my backyard with what looked like garden shears. And about 5 minutes later, her jogging out of my yard. So after downloading the footage to my phone and computer, taking pictures of the damage and ordering new parts for my forge, I called the non-emergency police number and talked with the police. Shared the footage with them, and they wrote down some info and walked over to her house and tried to get an explanation. She just yelled at them until they had heard enough and placed her under arrest, which didn't exactly calm her down as she was wailing and screeching like a banshee the whole way to the car, yelling some pretty harsh obscenities at me, the officers, and another neighbor as he walked out and asked me what was happening. As of right now, she's facing one charge of break and enter, one charge of vandalism, one charge of disorderly conduct, and one charge of resisting arrest as she kicked one of the officers while they put her in the car. I have an appointment with a small claims lawyer tomorrow, and me and my dad have been laughing our asses off at how crazy she was. And to Kay, I'll see you in court. Hope your night in the county jail was pleasant. Use the union guidelines to outsmart an HR woman. When I was a senior in high school, I started working as a cashier at a grocery store. While this was not my first job, it was my first one where I was part of a union and learned about some of the pros and cons of unions. Mostly pros like regular raises, breaks, holiday pay, etc. We had a woman there who was basically our human resources person, and we didn't get along from even before I worked there. I'll call her Sally. I came in for my interview and Sally was not there and had left work for the day. I remember apologizing and saying I must have mixed up the days. Is there any way you can find out which is the correct day for my interview? But the manager on duty advised me that I was correct as they had checked the calendar in her office and she had written it down, and so he, the front-end supervisor, and the other manager who came in to start a shift all interviewed me and hired me instead. I later heard from the grapevine that she was working 2 locations and really wanted to be hired full-time at a larger store, which would have been a promotion for her, but instead she was placed full-time at our location only and didn't get promoted, and that her missing my interview was the final nail in the coffin for her, as this was just one of a long list of mistakes she made. She was always making excuses for why I couldn't put in to be transferred to another department when they were hiring people for those departments like bakery or deli, and kept me as a cashier even though it was lower pay. Even so, I came back to work there over my winter break for college. I had gone away to college instead of commuting, and also summer break. Here's where my malicious compliance comes in. Our union states that after a waiting period, I believe it was 3 months, we get holiday pay for working Sundays and holidays. It was time and a half. We also are entitled to a raise every 6 months, and being away at college is not supposed to affect that since we joined the union before leaving and come back on our breaks and still owe our dues during those times when we're still part of the union but away at school. I got my first paycheck stub for the summer and noticed I didn't get my holiday for working that Sunday nor my raise. I spoke with a coworker who advised me to speak with the store manager. He was one of the ones that interviewed me and always looked out for his staff. Since we were between union reps at the time, he was a born problem solver and told me right away he can fix the payroll error for me and make sure that I got not only the proper wage from now on, but I would get back for the time I should have gotten the raise but didn't. As far as the holiday pay though, that had to be taken care of by Sally since she was in HR, and he suggested we go see if she was free and speak with her. She just spoke to the both of us in a condescending tone about how this was union policy, that I had to start all over again with seniority, and that I had to earn that holiday pay again by being there for 3 months. He pointed out, as I did, that I was getting this holiday before leaving for college and even over the winter break that I had worked, but she just kept saying to me it's union policy. My manager calmly tried to negotiate with her and get her to correct, and even stated that other employees had not had to go through this. I finally just raised my hand to silence them both. Okay, so you're saying that I can't get my holiday pay even though it was before I left to go back to college at the end of January due to union policy, correct? I asked. Yes, she said with a long dramatic sigh that was meant to say like, I've been telling you. I nodded, grinned, and stated, but union policy also states that I don't have to work holidays or Sundays and that I can't be penalized for refusing to do so, correct? My manager grinned at me like he was very proud of me as he saw exactly where this was going. Well, yes, that's true, Sally said, looking a bit nervous. Okay, well then, here's the compromise. Since union policy states that I can't get the holiday pay for working Sundays and holidays for the rest of the summer, I will not work any Sundays or holidays, and per union policy, I'm allowed to do this, I said with a shrug. She immediately started laying on the charm about how I'm such a great worker and that they really need me to be there to help out with Sundays and holidays, but I pointed out that they had plenty of other employees who were getting the holiday pay that they count on, and I would be glad to return to working holidays and Sundays once I got my holiday for doing so. My manager commented that he and I needed to change the schedule and casually mentioned how this was going to be hard as he now had to take me off for next Sunday and Monday, as that Monday was Memorial Day and it was a Thursday, but that the store would just have to make it work if they couldn't find anyone willing to come in. Once she had left for the day, he called me upstairs to his office to help with the schedule since I had to work so many days each week. I walked in to find him and another manager there grinning ear to ear, telling me how proud they were of me for how I handled that situation. On Memorial Day and on the 4th of July, I got a call asking if I can come in because they had other people call out sick who were scheduled. I just calmly explained that I was no longer working Sundays or holidays and that Sally could explain why. Before the end of the summer, she found a new position and quit, and the new HR person was much nicer. One of the first things she did was make sure I and a few other college students who had similar issues with the holiday got our holiday pay reinstated, and when I requested about a transfer to another department, she gladly asked around and had me put in the health and beauty department that same week. Update. Our entitled parents who disowned us for not giving them grandchildren struck again. About a month ago, me and my fiance's parents decided to threaten us to be taken off their will if we didn't give them grandchildren, which we won't be. Anyhow, they struck again and my fiance is really fuming with rage now and wants to share the situation. There are some points that will need clarification and I'll try to make them along the way. First, as we mentioned, due to the absurdity of the situation our parents were imposing on us, we felt that we don't want them at our wedding. Thus, we removed their invitation as a whole. My brother is my best man and he supports us wholeheartedly. Now, let's get to the point. After we left my parents' home that day, we had absolutely zero contact with them. They made their decision and we made ours. We thought that was going to be it. Now, one thing that needs to be clarified, our wedding was planned to be happening on October 17th. However, due to the pandemic outbreak, these large gatherings of people were completely prohibited, on my region at least. But thankfully, the venue we had acquired is run by the most lovely administrators. As soon as the outbreak started, they contacted us and gave us every assistance needed with rescheduling. Thus, we rescheduled our wedding to 2021 in the same month. As the situation is still uncertain, that can change but shouldn't for the time being. We aren't really bothered by it, as we understand the situation is very dire and we don't mind waiting for a time which everyone will be safe, possibly. This morning, while I was studying for some exams I'll be having at school, my fiance got a call by the venue administrator asking why we canceled our wedding. Obviously, that was very strange and confusing to us. My fiance let them know that we had no desire to cancel our wedding and further asked what that was about. Apparently, my fiance's parents called the venue on our behalf, telling them that we no longer wanted to rent the place as we would no longer be getting married. Now, let me explain why the venue was leaning on accepting this situation. In my country, our IDs carry not only our ID and social security equivalent number, but also the name of the parents. And to rent a venue, you need to provide your ID for them as a requirement. I don't know if that's how it works everywhere, so I wanted to make it clear. Apparently, they wanted to take advantage of that fact and try to dupe the venue to cancel our wedding. Luckily, the administrator is quite smart and saw that on our sheet needed for rental, there was only 2 names/numbers for contact if we can't be reached. One is my brother and the other is my fiance's best friend. At the time we booked the place, we were already in a strained relationship with our parents, so neither of us put them as a contact. Thankfully, the administrator actually paid attention to that and took the care and time to reach out to us. Otherwise, we might not only have lost our special date, but also all of our deposit and dream venue. I'll be honest in saying that I never expected that kind of behavior from anyone in our families, but anyway, it seems I was wrong. Anyhow, now my fiance is letting out fumes and I'm trying to calm her down. We already sent a contact to her parents and mine as well, as we're sure they're in this together, for them to never try to meddle in our lives again. My brother is as angry as we are and he just told me he was heading to their house to tear them a new one. I don't even know how to feel right now. I never expected or wanted things to be this way, but neither of us will go back on our decision of not having children. Truth be told, I already have the papers for sterilization ready. I just hope that one day they do see that their entitlement just lost them their son and daughter, all because of grandchildren that will never exist.